In August 1962, Hollywood was shaken when news broke that Marilyn Monroe, the world's ultimate sex symbol, had died at the age of 36. Officially, it was called an accidental death, but from the very beginning, the story was cloaked in mystery. According to Frank Sinatra's haunting recollections, Monroe's death was not merely a tragedy. It resembled a power play where politics, the mafia, and Hollywood collided. Her tangled connection with the Kennedy family, the explosive secrets she was believed to have kept, and even the possibility of a clean injection often linked to organized crime were all part of the puzzle. So, what was the truth? Has the public been deceived about Monroe's death for more than half a century? In her final months, Monroe lived quietly in her Brentwood home in Los Angeles. Everything seemed calm until the night of August 4, 1962. Around 3 a.m., housekeeper Eunice Murray repeatedly called for Monroe but got no answer. Alarmed, she phoned Monroe's psychiatrist, Ralph Greenson. When Greenson arrived, he climbed through a window to enter the bedroom. Minutes later, Monroe's personal physician, Hyman Engelberg, also appeared and confirmed that the legendary star had passed away. The autopsy report later stated Monroe had died between 8:30 and 10:30 p.m. that same night. The official cause, barbiturate overdose. Tests showed high levels of chloral hydrate and pentobarbital in her blood and liver. Near her bed, empty pill bottles were scattered. Monroe's doctors admitted she had long battled depression and anxiety, often relying on medication to sleep. Deputy Medical Examiner Thomas Noguchi, after ruling out direct foul play, formally concluded barbiturate overdose. But the public wasn't convinced. Too many details remained murky: the inconsistent time of death, suspicious questions surrounding the drugs, and most notably the unexplained disappearance of Monroe's personal diary. These gaps fueled belief that behind the cold official report lay another story, a truth never revealed. Although Monroe's tragic death was recorded as official fact, a shadow of doubt persisted. Rumors of her ties to President John F. Kennedy and his brother, Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy, turned the case into one of the 20th century's greatest mysteries. Her personal life was already in turmoil: 3 failed marriages, chronic depression, dependency on medication, and rumors of a love triangle with both Kennedy brothers. Suspicion only deepened after her sultry "Happy Birthday, Mr. President" performance for John F. Kennedy in May 1962, a moment that stunned the world. In 2010, a rare photograph by White House photographer Cecil Stoughton surfaced, showing Monroe standing next to one of the Kennedy brothers at Arthur Krim's house. Biographer James Spada asserted that actor Peter Lawford had introduced Monroe to John Kennedy in 1954. While there was no definitive proof the Kennedys orchestrated her demise, Spada insisted it is clear Marilyn had intimate relations with both Jack and Bobby. When the president's interest waned, Monroe was allegedly handed over to his brother in spring 1962. One witness even spoke of a wiretap recording from Monroe's home on the night of her death, the voices of Peter Lawford, an enraged Bobby Kennedy, and Monroe in despair. In 1983, her housekeeper hinted in an interview that there had been a cover-up possibly tied to Bobby Kennedy's presence on August 4th. What baffled many was that investigators never questioned key figures Murray Monroe's press agent Pat Newcomb Lawford or anyone from the Kennedy family. Journalist Anthony Summers called it a glaring omission that left the investigation deeply flawed. Later, some associates suddenly landed important positions. Pat Newcomb, for example, took a post at the U.S. Information Agency after spending time with the Kennedys at Hyannisport. Seymour Hersh, in The Dark Side of Camelot 1997, described Monroe as a ticking time bomb who could damage the president's image. Former Secret Service agent Jerry Blaine admitted he had witnessed encounters between Kennedy and Monroe. Even Joe DiMaggio, Monroe's second husband, was haunted by the rumors. He believed the Kennedys bore responsibility, thinking they had broken her emotionally. Dr. Rock Positano later recalled that DiMaggio suspected foul play, but he stayed silent to avoid a national scandal. In 2022, Netflix released The Mystery of Marilyn Monroe: The Unheard Tapes, using Anthony Summers' never-broadcast recordings. These tapes suggested a deliberate cover-up centered on Monroe's ties to the Kennedys. Summers concluded, while no absolute evidence of murder existed, the truth of Monroe's death was clearly concealed, with the Kennedys at the heart of it. Among Monroe's closest friends, one man never accepted the official verdict: Frank Sinatra. For Sinatra, the press's explanation was never convincing. He considered her death a crime and believed Marilyn had been silenced. Tonio Pedisano, Sinatra's former manager, revealed in his memoir, Sinatra and Me in the Wee Small Hours, that Sinatra carried this suspicion to his grave. Contrary to common speculation, their bond was one of deep affection and respect. Sinatra admired Marilyn's beauty and wit, but also knew she was too fragile and emotional to abandon her forbidden love affairs. Because of this trust, Monroe confided her most dangerous secrets to Sinatra, including her brief but perilous entanglements with both John and Robert Kennedy. After being coldly discarded, she once wept before Sinatra, confessing her confusion and despair. Notably, just days before her death, Marilyn visited the Cal Neva Lodge on Lake Tahoe, co-owned by Sinatra. There, she confided she was planning a press conference the following week to announce her reconciliation with Joe DiMaggio. But that very announcement sparked dangerous rumors. In her emotional state, Marilyn might inadvertently expose sensitive details about the Kennedys. Whispers spread that she had even been intimate with Robert Kennedy backstage before a public appearance, something that could disgrace the nation. Sinatra never believed she would betray the Kennedys. He insisted Monroe still cared for John. Yet the very existence of that press conference alarmed powerful figures, and in the end, it never took place. After Monroe's sudden death, Sinatra was shaken by chilling reports from lawyer Mickey Rudin. She hadn't simply overdosed. She may have been given a direct injection, a clean method favored by organized crime. Rumors even linked Robert Kennedy lurking like a shadow over the dark script. Those whispers echoed through mob circles tied to Sam Giancana and followed Sinatra for the rest of his life. At his Palm Springs retreat on long nights with Sammy Davis Jr. and Dean Martin, Sinatra often spoke of Marilyn recalling fragmented memories like a man forever haunted by losing a true friend. It wasn't until decades later that Ope DiSanno chose to reveal these stories, not just to show another side of Sinatra, the man behind the legend, but also to revive an unanswered question. Why did Marilyn Monroe die? Was she the victim of a dark conspiracy still hidden from the world? To understand, we must look deeper into her connection with the Kennedy brothers. Monroe's sudden death immediately became breaking news across the globe, splashed across America and Europe within hours. On the morning of August 5, 1962, major newspapers blared the headline, "Marilyn Monroe Dead at 36. In New York, copies of the New York Times and Daily News sold out in hours. Crowds gathered in cafes, bus stops, and shops to discuss the news. In Paris, London, Rome, and Tokyo, reports described public shock. People crying openly on the streets as they heard the news on the radio. Artists, intellectuals, and politicians quickly reacted. French poet and filmmaker Jean Cocteau called Monroe's death a warning. It is proof of the price paid when the world turns a person into an idol. In Britain, Laurence Olivier, who had worked with Monroe on The Prince and The Showgirl, admitted feeling guilty. believing the pressures of film and press contributed to her despair. Director Joshua Logan, who worked with her on Bus Stop, lamented Hollywood took too much from her and gave back nothing but loneliness and depression. On August 8, 1962, Monroe's funeral took place at Westwood Village Memorial Park Cemetery. It was quietly arranged by Joe DiMaggio, her former husband who still called her his only love, along with Marilyn's half-sister, Bernice Baker Miracle, and manager Inez Melson. About 30 close friends attended, including acting coach Lee Strasberg. But outside the cemetery gates, thousands of fans gathered. They brought Rose's portraits, even Marilyn dolls. Women wept openly. Men stood in silence as her casket passed. Reporters crowded in, but DiMaggio ordered strict control. No Hollywood stars were allowed to speak, and he banned the Kennedy family from attending. Her coffin, draped in white and yellow roses, was laid to rest in crypt number 24 of the Corridor of Memories. DiMaggio stood silently at her grave. For the next 20 years, he sent 3 red roses to Monroe's resting place every week, proof of an enduring love even after tragedy. For Americans, Monroe's death wasn't just the loss of a movie star, it was collective trauma. She symbolized beauty, fragility, and the post-war American dream. Her death at 36 felt like burying a generation's youth and romance. In the weeks that followed, media outlets were saturated with her image. Life Look Time magazines ran special covers. Bookstores were flooded with hastily written Monroe biographies that became bestsellers. Poets wrote elegies, musicians composed tributes, and radio stations replayed her songs endlessly, from Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend to I Wanna Be Loved by You. Some psychologists said the public experienced mass mourning because Monroe was not just a star. She was woven into millions of people's lives. The press exploited her death to the fullest. On August 5, 1962, as soon as radio announced Monroe's passing, U.S. media turned it into a global spectacle. Papers like New York Times and Los Angeles Times ran bold headlines, while tabloids screamed with sensationalism, Marilyn's death, and the secrets behind it. Within hours, the news swept into Europe, becoming one of the most reported events of the century. London's Daily Express printed in bold, "World's most famous blonde found dead." France's Paris Match dedicated a special issue calling her the goddess betrayed by Hollywood. Even Tokyo's Asahi Shimbun splashed her name across the front page. Media outlets dug into every detail of her life. Photographs of her body being removed from her home leaked, sparking outrage but boosting sales. Magazines reprinted her iconic images: the flying white dress in The 7-Year Itch, the sultry look in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, the dazzling smile on the red carpet. The contrast between her glamorous image and her tragic end created the perfect drama for the press. Rather than neutral reporting, tabloids like National Enquirer, New York Mirror, and Hollywood Confidential spun Monroe into stories of intrigue, old relationships with DiMaggio. Arthur Miller and John Kennedy turned into plots of jealousy, betrayal, or silencing. Each paper painted a different scenario: Monroe silenced by the government, or simply destroyed by fame. Respected outlets like Life and Time took a different angle, portraying Monroe as the tragic emblem of an era. They ran photo essays showing her fragility and loneliness, transforming her into a victim of idolization, stage lights, and Hollywood's crushing demands. Television networks NBC, CBS, and ABC ran special reports replaying her film clips with mournful commentary. Psychologists were invited to analyze her fragile psyche, elevating her death into a cautionary tale about the cost of fame. Talk shows held roundtables asking, "Was Monroe murdered?" All of it created unprecedented media frenzy, a national day of mourning without official decree. Within a year, over 20 books about Monroe were published, from serious biographies to scandalous picture books. Norman Mailer's Marilyn A. biography, 1973, implied assassination instantly becoming a bestseller and fueling more conspiracy theories. Publishers realized that whenever Monroe's name appeared on a cover, sales soared. Hollywood also capitalized. Studios re-released Some Like It Hot and Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, making them box office hits again. Documentaries, interviews with her friends and colleagues all reinforced her as a tragic icon. By 1973, Mailer's biography had cemented the idea of Monroe as a possible victim of foul play. Public pressure grew so intense that in 1982, Los Angeles District Attorney John Van de Kamp reopened the case. A special panel reviewed all medical files, autopsy records, and witness statements. Yet their final report still ruled out homicide. Even so, suspicion never faded. Biographers, journalists, and witnesses continued to reveal new pieces, surveillance tapes, mysterious phone calls, or Robert Kennedy's alleged presence in Los Angeles that night. Each revelation reignited speculation, ensuring Monroe's death remained an unfinished story. In popular culture, Monroe evolved into a tragic symbol. She was no longer just a blonde bombshell, but a reminder of Hollywood's dark side, where dazzling lights hid crushing loneliness and idolization destroyed fragile souls. Documentaries, books, plays, and exhibitions still revisit her story. In 2022, Netflix's The Mystery of Marilyn Monroe. The unheard tapes highlighted Anthony Summers' recordings, amplifying suspicions of a deliberate cover-up around her Kennedy connections. It showed that the full truth of her death still remains hidden. Through the media's lens, Monroe became more than a movie star. She became a myth, the most beautiful, the loneliest, and the most mysterious woman in the world. Newspapers, magazines, television, books, films, all helped build the legend of Marilyn Monroe. Her death didn't just end a life, it launched an industry of endless fascination. And it was precisely the media's relentless amplification, mixing truth and fiction, that ensured Monroe's death never faded. 6 decades later, her name still graces magazine covers, documentaries, and debates. Was Marilyn Monroe a victim of an unspoken conspiracy? People are often enchanted by stories that glitter like gold, where flashing cameras and roaring applause seem powerful enough to erase life's wounds. But reality is never that gentle. Behind the crimson curtain and radiant smiles on the red carpet lies another world, fractured, exhausted, and heavy with solitude. A legend is never forged in peace. It is shaped by sleepless nights, by empty eyes staring into the mirror once the makeup has smeared away, by forced smiles masking a broken heart. The brighter the spotlight, the colder and harsher the shadow behind. Some secrets seem destined to remain buried in dusty drawers, locked away by adulation. Yet a forgotten letter, a careless confession in a moment of weakness, can be enough to collapse an entire palace of illusion. And when the perfect mask falls, what chills us is not only the exposed truth, but the haunting question: was the glory we once worshipped nothing more than a dazzling stage concealing a bottomless abyss no one dared to touch?